Namaste, everybody. It's a pleasure, as always, to be here. And you might be thinking that my job is to curate sessions. So why am I here on the stage conducting sessions? See, sometimes it's like when nobody else can do it, it's like, you sort of fill in the gap. So don't mind if you see my face today and tomorrow in a couple of sessions. Let me put it on record. It's not because I wanted to push myself here. It was simply because things got turned around a little bit and I had to step in. So this is going to be a very, very interesting session on woke culture and how it is destroying traditional systems, civilizations, thought processes, and how it is inherently one of the greatest challenges that not just Bharat faces, but countries all over the world are grappling with this problem. And what are they going to do? What can we do to guard our children, especially, from this scourge called wokeism, and how it is very subliminally destroying the basic structures of civilization, family, countries that we know of. It's a bigger challenge than we would think. And when you listen to both the speakers, I'm sure you'll realize it. Abhijit here has written a book, a wonderful book. He's written two wonderful books, actually. The first one is called Asatyameva Jayate, which talks about the lies in Indian history that we have been fed. And the second book, more importantly to this topic, is called Termites, and how the extreme left is acting like a thought termite, how it is burrowing inside our brains, and how it is making, just like termites enter your house, you don't see them initially, but they burrow through all the basic furniture or the woodwork, so that one day the whole house collapses. That is something what is happening on a thought level all over the world, actually, through this woke process. And Aishwarya actually has a different perspective. While Abhijit's comes from a theoretical perspective and a historical perspective, Aishwarya's solutions and her thoughts come from a very practical perspectives, because she runs an educational institute. She probably grapples with these issues every day as she deals with the children who are corrupted by this thought process, and how she views it and what are the solutions that she proposes. So I will start with the basics. Abhijit, I think you will be the best person to talk about. We talk a lot about wokeism, being woke. So what is being woke, and what are the historical origins of the word? And can you give us a little bit of a historical perspective, please?
Thank you, Shefali. Anand Ranganathan generally asks you for 30 seconds. I'll ask you for at least 3 minutes to answer this question. Wokeism is a word which we hear quite often these days. Pujaniya Mohanji Bhagwat, in his Vijayadashmi address for this year and last year, he has spoken about wokeism. Many people also now speak and hear about that word. But there is a lot of confusion. Many people think that it is some kind of a new ideology or new fad which has come up in the 21st century, and they would like to know about it. But I would like to clarify that wokeism is nothing but Marxism, period. So it is cultural Marxism. Let's see how it evolved. So Karl Marx had said that revolution through the barrel of a gun will spread to countries which are more industrialized. So he said that the revolution will happen, it will be a bloody revolution through the barrel of a gun, and it will happen in Germany and England. He had also named the countries. But nothing of that sort happened. The Western countries, Western Europe and America, decidedly kept away from communism. Marx had also said that the borders between various countries will collapse, and the workers and exploited people of the whole world will come together. So he was completely anti-nationalism or anti-patriotism. Even that didn't happen. Workers from Western Europe fought in the First and Second World War for their own countries. They laid their lives also for their own countries. So there was a big confusion in the camps of the Marxists that how come everything that Marx has predicted is going wrong. So there was a president of Italian Communist Party called Antonio Gramsci. So he did some work on this, study on this, and he said that the exploited people, poor people from the West, don't embrace communism because they consider Western civilization, Western culture as their own culture. Whereas actually it is created to exploit them. But they think that it is their own culture, and that's why they fight for it. So he said, he put forth a thesis that we have to destroy Western civilization first. Western culture ko humko destroy karna hai, then only these people will embrace communism. And how we are going to do it? He has also written that down. He says that all the institutions that give strength to Western culture will infiltrate those institutions from inside, and then will slowly subvert them so that they are pushed to self-destruction. So this is called as cultural Marxism. Initially, Marx's philosophy was based on economic thought. This was based on culture. So classical Marxism and cultural Marxism. Cultural Marxism itself has evolved into wokeism, basically. And they operate on 3 levels. One is deracinate, divide, and destroy. So they will first cut you off from your roots. They will cut you off from your culture, your traditions. Then they will divide you across more and more fault lines. They will invent more fault lines if necessary. And then they will indoctrinate you with their perverted ideology so much that you will push to self-destruction. So that is the way in which they work. And I'll just give you a couple of examples that in 1918, Russia became communist. How it became communist is a different story. Whatever we have been fed with is completely fake. It was not a communist revolution. It was an uprising by common people against the oppressive regime of Tsar, and which was hijacked by communists. So let's not go into that right now. But 1918, they captured Russia, and by 1923, it was very clear that communism doesn't work. The communist ideology and communist economics was a complete failure, was already known by 1923. But they didn't accept it. And then what happens is when your ideology is proven to be failing to objective test or test of logic, then what do? Normally, you accept that you made a mistake and make a change, or you ignore what has been proven and dogmatically continue to follow your ideology. But communists, being communists, they found a third way, and they created something which is called as a critical theory, of which one part is, I'll just tell you, but that ideology says that there is nothing like objective truth. There is nothing like objective reality. And there is nothing like logic. So everybody's truth is his own truth. That is the kind of statements they made. And what they had found is that life in communist countries and life in Western Europe, the life in Western Europe was decidedly better. Because people were prosperous, people were free, and the entire economy was absolutely booming. Still, they continued to project that life in communist countries is somehow better. But even that argument collapsed in 1956 when Khrushchev admitted to the atrocities committed by Stalin. And then it was, the whole world knew that life in communist countries is absolute hell. So then they decided to make life in Western countries so bad. One of the professors of Frankfurt School who propagated this critical theory, Willy Munzenberg, he has gone on record saying that we'll make the Western civilization stink. He has written it. Only thing is we don't know. And that's why we think that it's all ideology of equality and rationalism and things like that. It is nothing of that sort. Their entire idea is to destroy your culture, it is destroy your traditions, and finally destroy life itself. Ultimately, that is the whole thing. If you allow me a couple of points. When I say they want to destroy life, you just look at the the phenomenon of transgenderism. I mean,
I'll come to that.
Okay.
Let's take that separately.
so
Because it's a big
I'll drop that right now. But there are many things in which, like for example, they have completely perverted the feminist movement. Now they are saying that the women should be 100% like men. They should just copy men. Everything that men do, they should be able to do. And they should do it just like men. And to men, they are saying that your masculinity is a toxic masculinity. So they want men to be ashamed of their masculinity. So men should become like women should become like men. Ultimately, where we are leading is the collapse of the civilization. So that is the whole, their attack is multifarious, multi-pronged, and on every aspect of humanity, every aspect of human life, and every aspect of our existence is under attack. And we don't even realize that because everything is happening behind very, very attractive masks. So that is in essence what is wokeism. Wokeism is all about talking about inclusivity, talking about social justice, talking about environment protection, talking about transgender rights. So these are things that you simply cannot oppose. We think that, oh, it's really good things. Inclusivity should be there. Social justice should be there. So nobody wants to oppose it. But behind that, their agenda is of dividing and destroying. So that is something that we have to understand. And we have to understand this is an attack on culture. So though I spoke about Western countries, everything applies to India also. Because now the focus is shifting to India, and India is under attack.
Thank you, Abhijit. That was a very powerful and very perfect summing up of what wokeism is. You talked about that wokeism talks about basically deracinating people from their culture, then dividing them, and then creating a dissatisfaction with their life in general, so they want to destroy everything. Now I come to Aishwarya. You run an educational institution, you interact with students on a daily basis. So I want to ask you, to what extent is this deracination really taken root in Bharat, in your practical experience? Do you see in your dealing with kids that kids are increasingly going away from their roots? They are, without understanding, they are deriding their customs, their tradition, without even knowing what they are. Is that what you feel?
Yes, definitely so. But I think also what children also understand as wokeism is a more African idea of a slang, which surprisingly means awareness. So woke means being aware, which is the furthest from what it is in all truth. But it is a very superficial idea of what you think is rebellion or thinking outside the box. So as a culture, as any society, we all believe that we fall under certain rules. We fall under certain understanding. There is a strata to society. There's basic understanding. And rebellion has been there right through. That is a mark of, I think, evolution. But rebellion has to have an answer at the end of it, instead of it only giving you questions. The aspect about wokeism, and I find that it is getting rooted, not as deeply rooted as possibly the West, but it's certainly finding its way to our country, because it asks you to question without giving you an answer. And that is a very dangerous thing for a child. See, it is imperative that you have to question, but somewhere there has to be a direction for that question. There has to be somewhat of an answer. If you are only left with questions, you are very confused. And a confused person is the easiest to manipulate, which comes back to, as you were saying, it disrupts society, right? So what it leaves children with is a multitude of questions with no answer. And has it found root? Certainly it has found root. Maybe in a slower scheme of things, but the thing with our culture is there is so much more to rebel against. It is not only, it is not only a political aspect, it is not only a social aspect. We have family dynamics, we have joint family dynamics, we have cultural dynamics, we have religious dynamics. We have so many aspects of our society that come together that there are so many more ways in which for you to rebel and question. And the difficulty is that not all of us have the answers to give our children. When children ask questions to their parents or question authoritative figures, not all of us have immediate answers to give them, which gives space for even more confusion. So has it found space? Yes, a little bit. Is it going to grow unless we are able to counter it with clarity and conviction and with also logic. I think that is very needed. It will find greater footing, I think.
I really like the point that you made, that it is necessary to question, but if you only question without knowing the answers or without even looking for answers, if questioning is the basis of your existence, then obviously you will end up getting more and more confused and therefore disoriented and therefore dissatisfied. Now I'll come to your next point, and which is a very, very valid point. You talk about, in the book also, you mention how the left has weaponized issues like sexual revolution and transgenderism to basically destabilize societies by hitting at the most basic unit of a society, which is a family, as we all know. So what are the specific instances in India where you've seen this happen? And why do you think, this is a question for both of you, the second question, why do you believe that these movements specifically target young people? And how does this is another third most important question, how does this differ from legitimate advocacy for the rights of marginalized communities?
Yeah, those who are awakened, they are called as woke. That is the idea. But their definition of awakening is a bit problematic. So, and one more thing I would just like to add to what I said earlier, that in 1956, Khrushchev said, I told you that after that they decided to create alienation and hopelessness. Again, this is documented by themselves, that we will create alienation and hopelessness in the Western world. And whenever I say Western world, please remember that I'm also talking about India, because India is, after all, a democratic country, and they're targeting the free world, fundamentally. So, in 1960s, the left first created the famous students' movement of 1960s, and from which the hippie cult originated. I'm sure many of you would remember. That was again asking questions, that why we should behave in a manner that society dictates us and all that. So it sounded very romantic at that time. But ultimately, those students, they were completely guided and mentored by the professors of the Frankfurt School. So we didn't go into the details of what is Frankfurt School and all that, but they are the ones who, along with Antonio Gramsci, created this entire cultural Marxism movement, in which critical theory was an important factor. And the word that I was not remembering last time was postmodernism. That is the ideology. Marxism and postmodernism was the combination from which this entire critical theory evolved. And postmodernism says that there is nothing like objective truth, and there is nothing like objective reality. And now they have gone a step further, and they are saying that there is nothing like meritocracy. So they say that meritocracy has been created to perpetuate white privilege. In India, they will say Brahminical privilege. So meritocracy should be destroyed. Then they are saying, now they have gone one step further, and they are saying that there is nothing like scientific truth. So they are saying that there is nothing like science. Science is just a cultural construct, again to exploit the masses. So these are all, I mean, anybody would think that it is so outrageously stupid that how it is believed. But they have a knack of creating an aura of scholarship around everything. And through that, they have created this theory called critical theory, which has taken charge of the entire academic world in the US and in other countries also, even in India. Yeah. So that is, in essence, the problem. Now, coming to things like transgenderism, like I said, that they are attacking culture, but beyond that, they are also attacking life. So for the human civilization, it's a sheer continuation of human civilization. Two distinct biological entities, man and woman, is important, because without that, how will the civilization even continue? And that is where they have attacked, and they have created this entire cult of transgenderism. So now, we all know it's scientific truth that man and woman are two distinct biological entities. In very, very rare cases, as an accident or as an exception, it happens that a person born as a man has more feelings of a woman, and vice versa. A person born as a woman also has manly feelings. But that happens naturally only in 0.02% of the cases. But here, because transgenderism has been made into a cult, I've given some figures of what percentage of young boys and girls are declaring themselves as trans. And they're so shocking that in UK, in the last 10 years, 4,400% increase has been there in the number of students who are claiming that they are trans. So there are various reasons for it, how it happens, why people do it. One thing is, right from the school, young children are taught, right from the age of 3 and 4, that success comes only because of privilege. And failure comes only because you belong to a oppressed identity. So white young boys and girls are told that your forefathers have created this wealth and everything, and you also get success because you are white, and you exploit your other friends from the class. So that, just imagine if a 4-year-old girl is told that your existence is because of privilege and exploitation. The pressure of guilt on the mind is so much that they want to escape that guilt. And you can't escape your color of your skin. Or in India, you can't escape being a Brahmin. So if you want to escape that, you feel that I should also have some oppressed identity. My oppressor identity I want to give up, and I should get some oppressed identity. And in terms of gender, they have said that people with normal sexual feelings are oppressors, and people with transgender feelings are oppressed. Again, a laughable thing, but they have made it into some kind of a gospel truth. So a young girl feels that, this is something which is good. If I declare myself to be a trans, then I'll become oppressed, and that is what happens. She declares that I am a trans, and then suddenly she becomes a hero. Then everybody says, oh, what a brave person she is. Then the whole class starts looking up to her. Then her peers also feel that I can also do this. And slowly it catches up like wildfire. And transgenderism is promoted like there is active marketing of transgenderism. I mean, in the United States, in schools, men who consider themselves to be women, they're invited as drag queens, and they wear artificial breast and short skirts and very heavy makeup, and they come and they tell stories to the children of 4 and 5 and 6 years of age. So you can imagine what kind of atmosphere and what kind of environment is being created to kind of shove the transgenderism ideology down the throats of the young generation. I mean, I can go on and on. How much you want me to?
No, I get the point. And before I come to Aishwarya, I'll share an incident. So this thing about what he said, suddenly there is a male gender, there is a female gender, there's a person who is born male who thinks he's a woman, there's a person who is born a woman who thinks he's a man. Is a different story. But now in the US, there is a concept of gender fluidism. Gender fluidism means you're born a woman, you have lived like a woman for 10, 15 years of your life, then one day suddenly you say, today I feel like a man, so treat me like a man. And then you can continue in that phase for 1 month, and then you will say, no, from today I start feeling like a woman. And this can happen for a day, for a week, for a month, for a year, permanently, whatever. But this gender fluidism is the most absurd idea that I have ever come across. So I'll take this as a joke, but this is actually a real incident. So this was shared by an American father. So his 12-year daughter once came from school, and for the same reasons that Abhijit said, good student, straight A student, she said that, Dad, I think I am transgender. From today, you please treat me like a man. Now a 12-year-old girl coming from a normal, happy family, together family, comes and tells this to the parents, obviously the first reaction would be absolute shock, right? And then you would start to argue, you would start to convince the child, and then the child basically is in the rebellious phase anyway, so the child doesn't want to be convinced, and then this just goes on and on and on. So what this father did is, oh, that's great. And then he went inside and he wore his wife's miniskirt and he put makeup on and he shaved his mustache and he said, I also feel transgender. So, you know what? I'm going to drop you to school like this. So the daughter was aghast because she obviously did not want her father to come to school like that. So she said, no, dad, come out of it. Don't do that. He said, no, if you have the right to do that, I also have the right to do that. I feel the same. And he actually came to drop her in school dressed like a drag queen, and then he behaved like a drag queen with her in front of her friends. And the girl was mortified. And she came home and said, next day onwards, it's okay, I'm going back to being a girl. I'm not advocating this, but I am telling this to you because this is also one way of doing it. But question to you, since you deal with children a lot, what if this happens, and this could happen in any family, what if this happens in your family, my family, or whatever? And as it happened in your school, or do you know personally if it's happened? And if yes, what is the practical way of dealing with it?
Firstly, I think it's a case-on-case basis, but I think one of the main things that we have to take into consideration is there's a difference between hardware and software. So hardware is what we are born with. It's the body that we are born into. Software is how you feel about it, if you want to look at it in that sense. Now, I mean, there have been multiple ways that software has gone through changes over the years. People, maybe, aligned to a different sexual orientation, which has been accepted over time. But where it becomes dangerous if you start messing with the hardware based on what your software is telling you over a very, very limited experience or a very limited period of time. So I think if you were to deal with it, the first question is to ask is, any of us can wake up and say, I feel like, if you're a woman, you can wake up and say, I feel like a man, but none of us really know what it is to be a man. Just like no man knows what it is to be a woman. And this is the basics of evolution. I can say what I think, but it doesn't mean I have any experience in the field. And without you having any experience in the field, you cannot really align to a belief. So I might think I know something, but I really have no idea. I might feel a particular way, but if we looked at it from a grander scheme of things, if we gave every feeling that we had validation, can you imagine what the world would be like? If every feeling that we had received validation, gave us an opportunity to express it explicitly, it is giving ourselves permission without protection, right? And I think as parents, the first thing we need to do is, you might feel a particular way, but as a parent, you have to curb that. I'm not giving you permission to continue to explore something that you have no understanding of. So I think the first thing we need to do is first, divide between hardware and software. And I think all feelings are fleeting. Especially, we all know if you're an adolescent or if you're a young child, feelings are very fleeting, right? You just need to tide that wave through it. Yeah. And then you will realize at the end of it whether this is something that is continual, this is something that you resonate with. And if you do resonate with something that you are not particularly aligned to, it's a deeper question to ask ourselves and our children also, because it is a need to be special. So we all want to be special. It's a fantastic feeling to, to feel special. But there's this also very wonderful quote that says, all of us are special, just like everybody else. Yeah. So, so if that's the validation that you need as a child, that need to feel special, to be valued or to be appreciated, that is something that we need to look at and, pay attention to, is what I would say.
Again, very, very valid, very practical points. Now, this is a question that pertains to both of you. In your book, you've talked about how the woke culture is basically encouraging extreme individualism. So you only think of yourself, you do not think of the family, you do not think of society, you do not think of government, you do not think of anybody. And that essentially is going to take us towards anarchy. And that is a culture that is being encouraged in educational institutions, that is being encouraged at work situation. And that is what is basically making young people break away from any sort of association with a collective, and finally, because we are social animals at the end of the day, we need structure, we need that collectivism, but the woke philosophy is basically aimed at extreme individualism. So, one, how is it happening in the Indian context? And B, how do you deal with this on a day-to-day basis, which we experience in workplaces, in schools, everywhere we go. This thing of it's my life, my rules kind of culture is being encouraged. So how do we find a golden mean between, okay, yes, you have individual rights, but you also have some duties. How do we get that perspective across? Question to both of you. Whoever can start.
So I think one of the reasons how we would deal with this is that it is there in every aspect. We find it in schools, yes, of course. You see it in schools where individuality has overtaken, collective good, or even for that matter, I think human decency. We've forgotten about how we treat other people, and what has taken over is my opinion is no longer just my opinion. Everybody is entitled to my opinion, and my opinion is the only one that matters, which at some place tells you that you do not matter, that I'm the only one that matters. And what that also does is that it makes us very, very alone. It's very lonely for a child or for an adult to feel that you are singular in a crowd, right? While it comes under the guise of being special, but it's extremely lonely, which is why we find that mental health issues have gone up. We all know over the last 10 years how mental health issues have skyrocketed through the roof because everybody is feeling lonely. And why are you feeling lonely? Because you are so special that loneliness is all you have, because you do not resonate with anybody else anymore. And how do we fix this as a collective good? Because we function in a collective society, right? So if you are coming into an environment that includes other people, whether it's a talk like this, or whether you're going into a school or a workplace, other people make your world as well. And none of us can function singularly. What is a singular life? If you are living in a cave somewhere, yes, you can absolutely say you live in a completely independent life where you are not dependent on anybody. Today, however you slice it, we are dependent on society around us to provide us with food, to provide us with shelter, to provide us with security. We're all sitting here being able, and these are what goes above myself, where I recognize that there is something around me that works, that gives me the privilege. Because also woke makes you very privileged. It tells you are entitled to everything without earning anything, right? So I think that is the first thing that we need to understand and explain to people, that it is not only about yourself, because as much as we are individual, we are a collective in whichever aspect that you look at it, family, friends, society, work, school, we are a collective. And one cannot function without the other is the basic understanding that we have to give our children, I think.
Actually, extreme individualism is something on which capitalists and communists both agree. Because communism wants to create alienation and hopelessness, as I told you, and the best thing to achieve that is to attack the family. And the destruction of family cannot be achieved better than anything, with anything else than individualism. And for capitalists, it works because more individualism, so more people stay separately, more homes are created, so more television sets are required, more washing machines are required, more homes are required, so more investment, more profits. So capitalism also is very happy if there is individualism. And communists, of course, they want to destroy the family in the first place. So this collaboration between two most powerful entities in the world, or most powerful ideologies in the world, communism and capitalism, has made extreme individualism very, very potent, because every institution that influences human mind is captured, it is actually promoting individualism. Like you take Hollywood or Bollywood, it is promoting individualism. Literature, OTT, TV, whatever, you name it, media. So individualism is taken as some kind of a virtue, that individual liberty is something that needs to be protected at any cost. And behind that veneer, they are attacking the family institution, they are attacking the institution of religion, they are attacking culture, traditions, everything. And that is working so well that we can see all around us that individualism is actually riding roughshod over everything else. And how we can counter it, I think you can't counter it on case-to-case basis, because we have to counter it on a macro level. We have to make culture cool. We have to make traditions cool. Right now, culture has become uncool. And that's why young generation is moving away from culture. Our culture is all about collectiveness. We celebrate festivals collectively. We do our rituals collectively. So that is something that we have to reclaim. I know it's a very, very long process and easier said than done, but that is the only way we can fight this. Because in each home, if we try to solve this problem based on the situation inside that home, it is not going to work. In my book, I have given a very tragic example of a lady called Shobha Swami. She lives in the United States, and right from childhood, her two daughters, she had tried to bring them up in a traditional way, taking them to Bharatnatyam classes and taking to through various types of cultural activities and things like that. But finally, they turned out to be woke, and they started questioning her. And now she says that when they are around me, I feel like I'm walking on eggshells. When there will be explosion, I don't know. So individually, it is not possible to solve this. You will have to do it at the macro level.
Before I open the floor to questions, I have just one quick question to both of you. So far, we have enumerated the problems. Now, I want to go towards the solution. See, we know that in our thought process, by that I mean the Bharatiya thought process and Bharatiya civilization, lie many of the solutions to the present world's problems. So, how do we make those solutions cool? You just talked about it. So, what is your perspective on both of you can talk a little bit about it. And after that, I'll open the floor to questions. I just have one request. Just ask questions. Don't make observations. Thank you.
I think you have asked me the toughest question, that how to make culture and tradition cool. But I think it's a very long process, number one. It has to be done with extreme thoughtfulness and strategizing, that is number two. Because the left has done exactly that. Like I told you, Antonio Gramsci, he put forth this theory in 1920s. And Frankfurt School were operating in 1930s. So over last 100 years, they have worked tirelessly and with single-minded focused on destruction. So similarly, we'll have to work with single-minded focus for a long, long time on building up things again. Like we know that Kailash Temple at Ellora was built by artists across generations. The process of building was going on for 200, 300 years. Now Marxists have also worked across generations for destruction. They were working for building up. These people have worked for destruction for last 100 years at least. So we are just about waking up. We have not even started. So how we can do it? I think we'll have to reclaim and recapture the institutions that affect human mind. So we'll need 100 prachyams. There is just one prachyam right now. We'll have to reclaim our media. We have to reclaim our education system. I mean, you name it and they've infiltrated it. I mean, I'll just give you a couple of examples. Again, just going back from what Shefali has asked me. That they started in the US by taking charge of the institutions that teach teachers, like we know B.Ed, M.Ed and things like that. So those institutions they first captured. Then they indoctrinated the students who were going to become teachers. Once those teachers went out into schools and colleges and universities, and they started teaching children, and more and generation after generation of students taught by them came out into the society. The thought was completely, the indoctrination was complete. So every educated person in the United States is now more or less indoctrinated by the teachers who have taught them. In India also, if you look at, let's say, UPSC coaching classes, just look at what they are teaching our children. Now these children will become IAS officers, become collectors and things like that tomorrow. All UPSC training institutions, barring a few exceptions, honorable exceptions, are all controlled by the left. Our media is all controlled by the left, we know. Our academia is all controlled by the left. And they indoctrinate with single-minded focus over the years, over generations. We are just realizing there is no shortcut. We also will have to go through this entire process. And now, I think, better late than never, but we must start reclaiming the institutions. That is the biggest challenge. And for that, our government will also have to support us, actually. I think that is one area where they have faltered, I'm very sorry to say. But unless we recapture the institutions, we will not be able to do it. And once we do that also, it's a long process, because changing minds is the toughest job. Influencing minds is the toughest job. And for that, we'll have to work dedicatedly, committedly, over a long, long time.
Aishwarya?
So one of the things that I think in terms of bringing our children back to our culture is I think it's any culture that gives us our humanity. What makes us human, what makes us social animals, what makes us basically gives every aspect of our soul is culture, especially in a culture like ours, which is so deeply rooted in spirituality, which is so deeply rooted in practices that will elevate the purpose of your soul, that anything else outside that culture can be looked at as mere information and academics. So we should not make the mistake of thinking that education and academics are the same as learning and growth. So in schools, yes, you get your academic education, absolutely. In anything else that you pursue in higher education, yes, it's academics, and academic learning is phenomenal for you to take you to the next plateau of whatever you might do professionally. But for personal growth, I think learning is something that is continual. And we have to explain to our children that we learn from our culture. Our culture teaches us much more than any academic book can teach us. And the respect, it starts from a very young age, because when we go back, the first thing that we need to ask, because what children ask us all the time is why? What and why? And we've gone from, I think, a generation that used to be because I said so, which is no longer good enough, for us to be, to have a logical answer. And the wonderful thing about our culture is there is logic at the end of it. You just have to find it. We have been lazy to find out. But there is logic. If we educate ourselves, we will be able to educate children when they ask us the questions that are so difficult to answer. So I think the first difference is separating academics from learning, and also understanding that culture is something that you live. It is something that you're born into. And it's something that, as much as you might try to segregate yourself from it, there are aspects of it that are imbibed in you that you do not even see, right? So from the way we speak, to the way we dress, to the way we interact, to how we view the world, a percentage of it is culture. And no matter how much we might be able to take ourselves out of it, we will never be fully out of it. And I think making children understand that is the first step to getting them to move forward in that journey of not being very separate from.
I'll just add, I think I agree with Aishwarya that, again, at home also there is a lot of responsibility on us as parents, grandparents and things like that. And for that, it is very necessary that our society understands what this problem is. problem of wokeism, what this attack on culture is all about, how do they work, how do they function. That understanding and awareness, I think, is again a very, very important thing. That unless we understand, like Shobha Swami tried her best to bring her daughters up in a cultural manner, but she didn't know what is wokeism. She didn't know what is woke attack, what kind of influences her daughters are getting exposed to in their school and college. So unless we know that, we will not be able to counter it. So awareness is very important, and parents will have to devote time. I think that is another big problem, that parents don't have problem and don't have time, and that is why this entire problem starts, and the job of people who want to subvert becomes easy. So that is another factor that is very, very important.
Now I'll open the floor to questions. Since we have only about 2 minutes, I'll take only 2 questions, one from this side, one from this side. So please ask. Otherwise, the speakers are available. So whenever during the coffee break, if you want to have a personal discussion, the speakers would encourage that, because this is not a Lit Fest where the speakers are on this side and the audience is on this side. The idea is to have a very fruitful interaction between the both. So please, questions. Anyone from this side? Anyone from this side? Yes. Yes, ma'am. Can anybody give her the mic?
Thanks for the wonderful discussion, Revati here. My question is, there's this personal cudgel that I always raise up, this regarding personal pronouns, which is, thrust upon children in the West. Okay, it hasn't percolated to India, but my point is, like Vishnu Ji was talking about definition of minority. What is the definition of minors? We don't have anything, because children are, by making them examine their own, what is their pronoun, you're lowering inhibitions. Childhood should be sacrosanct. We should protect the innocence of childhood.
So what is your question?
My question is there any legal or framework or educational framework that that supports the system where this is kept intact in India?
Do any of you have
Your question is about pronouns, is it?
No,
No.
my thing is like children, the sanctity of childhood, right? When not going into wokeism, it's okay. We all know the children are exposed to so much of social media. Okay, they learn the bad things from them. But are there technical frameworks, legal technical frameworks, that prevent children from not going too much into and say degrading
Got your
childhood?
point, yeah.
Right.
But there is, see, apart from the legal definition of a minor and major, below a certain age you can't get married, you can't vote, you can't do anything. I don't think there are, at least I'm not a lawyer, but not to my knowledge, that there is no law or there is no legal framework in Bharat says that children under 10 years cannot be exposed to this.
Okay.
Unfortunately, not.
Okay.
I think it is practically impossible to put any barrier that so much information should go to children and beyond that nothing should go. I think in the age of information explosion, it's practically impossible. We'll have to prepare the children to be judicious.
Because we have somebody from the educational sector also. The educational body is doing something.
Ma'am, yeah. Anyways, our time is up, so unfortunately I cannot take the question from this side. I apologize. For the next session, we'll take the question from this side first.